Well, I had a question come in on email about 4570. There's a guy looking at the H&R 155, and I've done a video on that before because that's the first gun that I ever bought because they were like $60 at the time. But it's in 4570, and it's got what got me started on that caliber, and I really, to me, it's like the ideal. But he was wondering about loads for it because there's a wide variety that are recommended for those, for 4570s. You know, like I wouldn't go shooting any of that Hornady stuff in them, that for sure. But when I got it, I got this little Lee loader with it. And for years what I was loading was 4227, 40.3 grains. Well, that is a little hot. You know, that 4227 is a little bit of a fast burning powder. So it's not ideal, and it really has a bump. And, you know, he was asking about, you know, because, like I say, in the manuals, there's quite a range. There's 2 whole pages here on, for the Springfield, you know, trapdoors, but that's a lower pressure load that does work very safely in these. You know, and it's not that on these you're going to blow that barrel, because that barrel is hugely thick. But it's hard on the lock back here, you know, the piece that locks it up if you're shooting real high pressure in them. So I don't, you know, the loads that I make for my Marlin, which is these, I always load them in the Starline brass so I know that I won't accidentally shoot one of these in the H&R. But like I say, I reload these in the Winchester brass that I don't trust in the Marlin because they don't last very long under the high pressure loads. You can see even this now, you can see the marks on it where probably will split the next time I shoot it. But what I do with these, I load them with Trail Boss. And I'm using a 4cc scoop of Trail Boss. And what that does, it fills you right up to like the base of the bullet. And that's pretty much how you work with Trail Boss. You know, you run anything short of compression works fine. You don't want to fill it up so far that you compress it. But, you know, that amount there is the 4cc dipper, though Trail Boss is hard to measure. But that's what you're looking for, and that makes a pretty good load. I'll make sure I get these right again. But for years, you know, before I was casting bullets, I was buying bullets and I was loading these soft points with 4227. But like I say, she's got a bump to it, but the gun certainly can take it. But it really is not the wisest thing. If you're not reloading, you can safely buy like those Remingtons. You know, they'll shoot in there just fine. You know, they're not a bad bullet. They're just underpowered compared to what I'm used to shooting in the Marlin. And I wouldn't want to, you know, I wouldn't be too afraid to shoot them in there, but I know it's not good for the gun. You know, these high pressure loads. But your normal off the shelf Remington, that's going to be just fine. But, you know, there's a lot of information for loading those. You know, it's a big range. You know, and what I'm actually shooting, the ones in the Marlin now, they actually aren't even in the book. I'm using 4064, and there's no listing for the weight that I'm using and stuff. But like, okay, here, like I'm saying, you know, when I was using that 4cc, that's 40.3 grains of 4227. Well, they've got it for a 400 grain bullet, when they're using 42-27, they're going maximum of 34 and a half. So like I say, I was pushing it. And that load is for the Winchesters and Marlins. That isn't even the Springfield load. So I say, I was pushing her on that, but I did it for many, many years. And it never gave me any trouble. They're a heavy built gun. Like I said, the only thing I would ever worry about would be back in that lock. Because I know one time I did have somebody shoot it, and after he shot it, well, I'm not sure if that was him or the gun, but after he shot it, the gun was actually unlocked. Now, I don't know if in the recoil, if he bumped that release and unlocked it, or if the gun just was jarred so much that it unlocked itself. But that's what I think would take the beat, would be in that lock. Like I say, normally now what I do is I shoot these Trail Boss loads in there. But it's a way to use up that brass. That Winchester stuff, that tends to split. But good gun, I don't know what they're selling for now. I know I paid $60 for when I got it, but it's been a very good gun. And 45-70 is just a great round to load for. But like I said, that was a long time ago when I was going by this load data. And I was pushing her. But I still, a lot of times, I'll go back to this chart when I'm playing around. Yeah, like even here they have the 4064, 41.6 grains. But I'm going, heavier than that in my Cowboy. But there's a lot of information. But yeah, like he said, reading in the forums that a lot of them were suggesting using the loads for the old Springfields. And that's probably a good policy. Like I said, they could take more than an old Springfield can, but you'd want to work up to it gradually. Yeah, because see here they don't list 4064. Well, that SR powder, 4759, 24 grains. That's a light load, but like I say, a Springfield ain't a strong gun. Not nearly what these are. So if you're, just starting out loading, I guess this would be the area I would be looking for in that Springfield stuff. But for just your screwing around, those Trail Boss loads are great. And they ain't, people think Trail Boss weak. You get a snoot full of Trail Boss, she's plenty powerful. I wouldn't hesitate to go after a deer with one of them. In fact, I shoot them in my Marlin, screw it on because I don't have the recoil of what my big loads do. And run one through. But they're not weak by any means. And if looking at this 155, you might notice the sights are different. I changed both sights actually on this. The normal one is just a flip down one, and you had no elevation or limited elevation adjustment. I like this one in that, when I'm playing around at longer ranges, I can click it up and down. But good gun. I would have to say if I was ever to run across another one of them, I would be tempted to buy it. Well, any of them old H&Rs, if you can get into them, for like $100 or under 100, though I don't know. Like I say, I don't hardly ever see them for sale anymore. but they used to be a $60 gun. And that was a fine deal. Because I know when I bought the gun, I got the Lee loader and bullets and powder and primers for 100 or a little over 100, right in that area. And that set me up for a lot of years.